Waiting. And we are live. We
Hi.
are here. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. ADHD Mama, thank you so much for being here on That's for Company. I'm so excited to do this. Yes, so thank you for being here.
I'm going to be sharing this right now, if that's okay,
You may
on my
share.
page. So you keep talking for 1 second here, and then I'll be like, "Hello, I'm Laura, ADHD Mama."
No, you. And I also I want to say, because we are on live and I want it recorded and known, um, that your glasses are fabulous.
I love my glasses.
I wanted to wait to say it until I pressed the button so that way it's recorded. Um, those are fabulous. And I also wear
They are
glasses.
legitimate glasses, eh?
No,
Like they're prescription.
I wear these, but and I take these off because like my lighting right now is not ideal, so there's so much glare. But as
Mm.
a glasses wearer, just so you know, regularly, I deeply appreciate it, and I just wanted that recorded. That I said that. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. So thank you for doing this, and I'm excited because I follow your platform and I'm on the journey myself in terms of the ADHD world, but fairly familiar as we talked about before, but in getting to know my background. So I work in education and I have a fairly, well, I believed, a fairly good understanding and grasp of ADHD in terms of that. But then my husband was diagnosed several years ago. So much of sort of my adult life has been navigating around him, around my partner. And then we had kids and started seeing signs or signals that okay, maybe within my kids as well, and hindsight's 2020, so definitely within my family. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. And it wasn't up until about a year or so ago that in a session with our psychologist, she basically looked at me and said, but you have it, right? And I
Yeah.
remember I said, no, I don't. And she's like, no, like you really do. You know that, right? And I was like deeply offended, which even looking back on that is so ridiculous because I'm just so aware that I'm like, I absolutely do not. But because I guess my ADHD just it shows up so differently than my husband's and differently, let's say, than my siblings or my mom. Like it's different. So I never ever pegged myself or labeled myself or understood that part of myself. And as soon as she said it and then sort of identifying certain things, I burst into tears and there was a relief. It was that feeling of like, oh my God, yeah. And she's like, but you knew that. And I was like, no, I didn't.
No.
And so since then, it's just been, again, like always feeling so well versed in it, but then coming at it from my perspective, like from my lens now. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I have to like reteach myself things or better understand things through my own lens as a mom and with a career and a wife and all that stuff. So I latched on to your platform as well as many, like I just kept going deep. I'm like, I want to know moms that have this. I want to know female, like I need to like I need to really
Are there
understand.
others?
I need others with me. And yes, so that's how I came across you and what you do, which I think is wonderful. I took your quiz, as you know, figured out some more things about myself. So I'm excited to just dive in and ask all the questions. Maybe not all of them because that would be all night, but some of the questions that I
Ask
have.
the questions that make sense for you.
And
Here, I'm going to post in the comments that quiz. So adult,
yes, yes.
boop, write a comment. Go ahead and start asking a question.
So oh my goodness, so many. Ready? I wrote some down. So my one thing that I want to do better at is the navigation of stress, and whether it is it, parenting with, I think parenting in general is stressful. So let's be real. It doesn't matter what you have or not have. Parenting is stressful. But I think when you tack on ADHD, whether that is one mom or dad, or dad, mom, regardless, when it's one parent that has ADHD or two
both
or both
or more.
or more, exactly, or more, I feel like the intensity, the high energy, it's amplified. So my question, or one of my questions, would be how to strategies or ideas to navigate stress more effectively, more productively, with ADHD.
Absolutely. Great question. So over the years, as
Hmm.
the ADHD mama, I have noticed that often parents, when they are stressed, they are worried, they're focusing on the kids, which is okay and fine. It's normal to try to focus on our kids. But when
Absolutely.
it comes to having ADHD yourself, you have to learn how to work with your ADHD first, and
Right.
that helps your whole family.
Right.
And parents often, like, they try to jump in, they go right for the kids. The kid
Right.
is the issue. Let's solve the kid, and that will solve
Hmm.
our lives. But if you
Right.
also have ADHD, you need to learn how it impacts you. And by learning that, you will teach your child how to actually deal with their ADHD. Because a big that side's sloppy. He was bothering me, and then with the river. Anyway, that's okay.
I understand. It's okay.
um, so I was going in a direction. I got lost. I distracted myself, but we're gonna get back there.
We're
That's
gonna
okay.
so we're focused on the kids because that's what we're
Oh
where
my
we
goodness.
automatically go, right? In high stress
Automatically.
situations, it's where you
Automatically.
naturally go. Absolutely.
So, and as parents, too often, and I was guilty, and I still am guilty of this,
Hmm.
I try to use my words to
Right.
fix the problems instead
Mhm.
of showing them through my behaviors.
Okay, what do you okay,
And there was
that's what do you mean by that?
aha. So when you're having an ADHD struggle moment, how do you deal
Mhm.
with it? Do you get angry? Do you get sulky? Do you hide? Do you avoid? Do you eat? There's so many maladaptive behaviors that I know.
Mhm.
There's a
So
reason I
many,
look like this.
all of them. No, like all of the above.
I got gummies on my desk. These are stress gummies. Like,
Yep.
yes,
Mhm.
I get it. But uh, I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but you have to recognize where those patterns are and then
Right.
work with them. And that's a big part of understanding ADHD. And there's a huge gap in the world about where people get a diagnosis or assume they have ADHD and then
Mm.
they're just told, like, take medication and then figure it out. I am
Right.
pro medication, but that's not the only piece that helps and supports you. So I've created courses to help adults understand their ADHD first so that
Yeah.
they can help their kids. And I've also written a book about this.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. There it
Ta-da!
is. There
So
it
I have
is.
a printed copy. It's actually a PDF, by the way. It's called Morning Routines for ADHD Parents. And the
Mhm.
book is actually split into two. The
Okay.
first half, focus only on the parents. You
Right.
got to deal with yourself first.
Yep.
And then it deals with the kids. And how you deal with yourself and your kid is a bit different because
Mhm.
it's more about problem solving of where the pinch, okay, it's all problem solving, but it's more about where are those gritty details in yourself and learning to ask yourself those questions and taking those breaks to do it, which are all hard when you have executive
Yeah.
function issues, but they're important. And the more you practice, the easier it is. That's a big part of this. It's all about the practice.
Yeah.
Because how many people, I see there's 7 people in the chat here. Hello,
Mm.
where can I buy your book? Here, I will put a link. The ADHD Mama. I will share this. And
Amazing.
I was talking about something and I got distracted by that.
That's okay.
What was I saying? Do you remember? Oh, Lordy. I'm having a day.
Oh, that's okay. Well, one thing I do want to say in regards to like when you're having like you had mentioned when you're in a high stress situation, it is about modeling. Um, and I get that, and I want to bring attention just an actual example of mine. So one thing interesting based on what your book is called, which is why it triggered this idea in my head, was morning routines, and they are still very challenging for us. We have two littles, so
Mm,
we have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and morning routines were by far the most challenging thing. And I mean myself and for my kids. Now, prior to the pandemic, it was literally something I remember like being so ridiculously anxious about like every morning getting up and how I dreaded waking up my kids, going through the routine because they're going to have like they're tired and then I feel bad and they're having a freak out and I'm freaking out and I'm yelling and they're yelling back at me and they're crying and they're having tantrums and I'm definitely not my best self because I'm yelling because I have to get out the door and I don't want to be late and that's part of my thing like I can't be late. I
me
cannot
either.
I
No, my
cannot be late.
ADHD is I'm forced to show up early because of
Yes.
rejection, worrying about being rejected. It's like this
100%.
whole layers of like stress.
And I think about, like, if I know I have to be somewhere the next morning, like, I think about it. Like, I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god." Like, it was like, that's, like, I have to get to work. I gotta drop them off at daycare. I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my," like, lunch. Okay, 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 okay. Like, mornings for me were by far the highest stress. So then the
Yep.
as I stutter, pandemic happened, and as we all went through our adjustments, what started to happen and what I started to really notice was, because mornings got to be so much more calm, I really
Mm.
noticed a change in myself, and how much the change in my kids, and how much we were able to, like, really enjoy each other in the morning. So then, so when we had to go back to work after the first lockdown, and I started feeling that way again, where I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my," like, and then how much I didn't want to feel this way. I'm like, "No," like,
Mm.
I just had a
Mhm.
few months that were amazing with my kids. So a strategy that I did not want to do, but I did, is I got up, made myself get up almost 45 minutes to an hour earlier. And it was
Mm.
for me. It was, I got myself ready. I had a whole hot coffee by myself. Um, and then I would go get my kids. And what I noticed with that is just understanding myself is, like, if I get myself together and I'm all ready to go, I can then be a bit more pleasant and present for my kids. And the more, and then they feel that energy, and then they're able, and I am not saying that all mornings are great mornings, because they're not,
Nope, not
but
gonna
I'm
lie.
just,
Not gonna tell you my mornings are perfect.
they are not perfect, let me tell you. And, like, Cheerios all over the floor, but that's not the point. But it's just, it was, there was a shift, and I noticed it first in myself. So going back to this idea that as an ADHD parent, you have to really genuinely figure out yourself and what is going to work for you. And the domino that that had on my kids was significant. That I noticed it, where I got to enjoy my mornings better with my kids, and then they're able to sort of implement strategies for themselves because it's calmer, and they can try and do so
Yeah,
at least. So
what a
yeah,
difference it makes when
yeah,
the people are calm and semi-happy in the morning compared to the screaming mess that happens.
yeah.
Yeah,
So that was that was a big one. Now my next thing I wanted
good
to
for
ask you.
you.
Well, thanks. And again, I just want
That's
to
a
say
big
for the
deal.
record,
Can you hold on to your question 1 second?
yeah,
So in my book, I don't actually give specific advice like what you
mm,
recommended. I love the fact that you're telling this story. I love the fact that you're sharing this. But in my book, I get you to write down all the
mhm,
steps. And
yeah.
then one of the things you do in the book is you need to score. Is this
Oh,
where the issue points are or not? So you're analyzing because your pinch point, you needed to get up early.
yeah.
For me, I get up after my children.
Oh my gosh, how does that
I
work?
know, but
How does that work?
we have life very much down to like everyone
Yeah.
is trained. We all know what to do. So
Mhm,
it's very clear expectations, but I just can't get up. So my girls, they
mm.
start breakfast. Breakfast for them is 45 minutes.
Oh my
So the
goodness, yeah.
time was for them to slowly wake up, slowly get their cereal, and they do it.
That's
And then I
amazing.
wake up and they're halfway through their 45-minute long breakfast and I start my day. But that doesn't work for everyone. So if I
Absolutely.
wrote my whole book, here's the advice, here's what works for me. No, no. What I wrote is similar to what you would learn in a first aid course.
Hmm.
It the practical skills that can apply to different situations because
Right.
not everyone's scenario is the same, but I
Right.
love these moments where we can share what has worked for
Yeah.
us, and that might inspire someone to try it or test it and then see if it worked or not. Sorry, you
Absolutely.
can ask
No.
your question now.
No, absolutely. It's actually a really good segue into my next question, which is, and again, I've always prefaced this because I think it applies to any parent, but it's guilt. And that is something that again, as a parent, we all have it in terms of this. Are we doing enough? Not doing enough? Are we doing too much? Did I pack enough for your lunch? Is it healthy enough? Is it good? And there is nothing that you don't question or feel guilty about. But again, I will say that with ADHD, I feel
It like
there is,
magnifies it, doesn't
it
it?
magnifies it to such a level. And then I will speak for myself and say, I think about it so intensely and I feel like so much more. And the idea of guilt with ADHD, I think really is really more intensified and magnified. Yes. So
Absolutely.
I would love to chat about that for a second before I share my fun story of guilt. Because there's probably
Okay.
so many, but sure.
Wow. Okay. So I have thrown out a lot, not all, but a lot of the mom guilt. That
Mm,
took time.
yeah.
That took therapy. And I do
Mm,
realize that is a privilege that not everyone has access to these things.
mm,
And it took a lot of time to get to that place. So I was adopted into a neurotypical household. No humans I have interacted with growing up had ADHD. Any friends
yeah.
I met that did, I didn't get to hang out with them. So
Oh,
I was not exposed to anyone like me, and I thought I was the only female with ADHD in the entire world.
oh.
And I was 29 when I thought I was still the only female, and I had made the only other female. One of my daughters has ADHD. And I was like, oh my gosh, one of me. What? How depressing. Now that I think at the time, I was like, oh, this is like so exciting. There's another
Yeah,
human. To find out there's millions and millions of us.
yeah.
So I grew up in a neurotypical household with parents that taught me in neurotypical ways.
Okay.
And when I started to accept my ADHD, accept who my daughter is, because it's two sides of the same coin.
Mhm,
You can learn to accept yourself, but still get annoyed with your kids' behaviors. So you got to learn to accept both sides of it. No one chose ADHD.
mhm.
Sometimes people would not choose this in many ways. I mean, yes, there's some parts that are kind of fun, and there's
Yeah.
many parts that suck. So no
Yes.
one would choose this, and throwing those things out. So my mother would give me advice about, well, just make the lunch be the night before. Like, well, that didn't work for me. So I had to sit down and stop and think, yeah, but why? Why does that not work for me? Well, I
Yeah.
have the motivational type of the urgency seeker. I need the pressure in the morning to actually get it done. So
Yep.
that's what works for me. And so learning about the motivational types was absolutely mind-blowingly changed my life and how I do everything. And there's a lot less of that guilt that is involved
Mhm,
in my life because I understand these motivational types. Now, if you want to learn a bit about your motivational type, in the chat, I did add the quiz. I created a quiz for
mhm,
adults and for children about the ADHD motivational type because there's 5 of them.
mhm,
Everyone has the 5th one. So we're just going to, there's 4 that the quiz kind of covers. If that makes more sense why there's
mhm.
only 4 in the quiz, it's because everyone has the 5th. Here, I'm going to just share it. It says go buckets. I do realize it's a very weird term, but
I
here, I'm
think when I did it, what did I get? I got, when I took your quiz, I got novelty seeker.
novelty seeker.
Mhm,
Oh, that is the fun one where
mhm,
you when things are new and exciting, it feels
mhm,
so good and your brain works, and then you can't
mhm.
finish the project and you start something new.
Sometimes. Or I have multiple on the go, like
And then you just switch
multiple.
back and forth because then it
I
makes it
have,
exciting and new.
yep, I tend to go back and forth quite often. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I haven't thought about this. Oh my gosh. I should make a video. Can I take a little note?
Of course you yes, you
Because
can.
I thought about a
Damn
new
right you
video idea
can.
in a while. Okay, so
Yeah.
reading, that pen's not working. New pen. Reading
Mhm.
um one book advice mom video. I hope that's enough notes to remind me tomorrow that I will remember. Okay. Growing up,
Mhm.
I struggled to learn to read. This is a whole thing. I'm not here to talk about that, but I am here to talk about the fact that advice I would receive
Mhm.
was, well, Laura, you just started a new book. Why didn't you finish the last one? And I'm like,
Mhm.
who cares how many books you're working on?
Mhm.
Who cares? Doesn't matter at the end of the day. If you're reading 12 different books and it brings you joy and you are still getting what you need out of this, good for you.
Yeah.
Live your best life. And now I listen to audiobooks instead of reading because I was in grade 7 when I learned to actually read. I faked
Mhm.
it through school till then, and then they found out, and then I had to learn. It was very hard to learn as a teenager. That was not a good experience. I can read now. It was a process, but I like listening.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of shame that
Mhm.
others will put on people for listening to
Yeah.
audiobooks. Well, I've turned this into something beautiful. My daughters and I listen to books together to spend time together while we're doing chores around the house. We're making it fun and playful. And then we'll watch
Mhm.
the movie or the TV show. So right now we're working on Lemony Snicket's the series of unfortunate events. We're on
Right.
book 7. And so
Oh
when
my
every
gosh.
time we finish a book, we watch the Netflix show. And my daughter, she's 10, and she's just like so into this and like
That's
the
amazing.
mystery of it, and it's really beautiful. So it turns into like this fantastic moment together where I don't feel shame for
Mhm.
reading with my girls through audiobooks. We went
Yeah.
in many directions there. Sorry.
No, no, I really do think that was great. And I would say that I'm guilty, and I'll share this story because I'm guilty of it myself. So prior to really understanding my partner, my husband, when he first got diagnosed, it was so simple for me. I'd be like, well, you forget, so just write a list. It's like that's what I do. So like it works. And he'd be like, okay, but then I write the list, but then I forget where the list is. And I'm like, oh my God. And I would get so frustrated. And I remember thinking in my head, like, I just don't understand. If you forget, we know why you forget, but now it's a matter of just doing it. Like just
Just do it.
just do
Just
it.
do it.
And again, this is coming from someone who, theoretically speaking, should have been very well versed on it. But it's like it took me time and experience and therapy and books, all the things to realize, well, wait a second, that works for me, but that doesn't work for you. So
There's a term for that.
me giving you all this advice, like really, it's nothing. It's air. It's like it's not helpful when it wasn't until I really, there you go. Yeah. It wasn't until I really took a second and be like, you have to, like, I'm in my head, I'm like, you have to stop. Like, stop just saying things and like, let's either come up, let's try it together. And if it doesn't work, okay, we'll try something else. And like, that's okay. But it was that constant, like, I was constantly giving him ideas and then getting frustrated that it wasn't working for him. But I was the one throwing all the ideas or the advice at him. And it's like, this is getting us nowhere. This is not, I'm not acting okay. This is not okay. So
There's
yes,
a
I just,
chapter in my book about this. It's called attribution theory. There's a term for this.
mhm. Oh my God.
So
Oh,
it's when people take what they works for them,
yes,
how the issues happen, and they assume everyone else feels the same way. But that's
absolutely.
not the case.
Right.
So what I like to teach is something called the rescue method. Because you're
Okay.
what can we take that scenario
Yeah.
of you're telling your husband to do lists, he's
Mm,
like, well, I'm gonna lose it. There's all these issues. And
mhm.
then your emotions do what?
They go
They got high,
everywhere.
didn't they?
They, oh yeah.
Got frustrated, didn't they?
Yeah.
So that is one of the biggest pieces when it comes to ADHD is understanding that you cannot solve problems when you're in that headspace.
Mm,
And every emotion does have an end. So every single course, I teach my rescue method. It's a 3-step method to learning how to deal with that part, the emotion, and
right.
then the problem solving. And where do those pieces fall in so that it flows in a pattern that
Okay.
it's so simple, kids can do it. As young
Okay.
as 4. I've had 4-year-olds
Hmm.
understand this, and ADHD 4-year-olds understand and follow this, and then use this system. And I teach it all the way up to adulthood because it doesn't matter how old you are, it
Right.
actually deals with the problem. And it's okay that you guys had these moments. I'm glad they're not happening as much anymore. That's
Right.
wonderful. But I have solutions for this if anyone is experiencing things like that
Yeah.
in your life.
And I also too, one last thing in terms of guilt, if anyone listening out there,
Oh, so much guilt. There
um,
are. We have 4 people.
that, hey, I'm good with that. But there was a moment with my son. Well, there's excuse me, there's many moments, but I'm sharing one quick one. Um, it's still with me because it morphed into many different things at that moment. So he asked me to cut up an apple. Mommy, can I have an apple? Some apple
Yes.
slices. And I
Yes.
said, absolutely. And then I went into the kitchen and obviously had every intention of getting the apple and cutting it. And I think I did grab it and wash it and then put it down. And I started 2 other things. There was 2 other sections in my kitchen of which I started chopping an onion or I was grabbing meat. I don't know what I did, but I started 2 other projects. About 15, 20 minutes later, my son came over to me. He goes, Mommy, my apple slices? And I went, oh, I go, oh my gosh, buddy, I'm so sorry. I'm like, Mommy forgot. I'm like, okay, 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 right now, right now. So I put down what I was doing and I went and I started going back to cut the apple. He stood beside me and I looked down. I'm like, okay, buddy, like I'm going to do it right now. He goes, It's okay. I'm going to stand beside you just in case you forget again. And I looked at him and I had so many emotions. Like I felt so bad. I felt so guilty. I'm like, buddy, I'm so sorry. You should not have to stand beside mommy to make sure she does not forget. But then I'm walking and he's like, it's okay, mommy. Like just, and he goes, sometimes we forget, like we forget sometimes.
The
And then
grace of children.
and we're walking and I'm like going over and I'm grabbing the plate and I'm putting the apples in the plate. And then I passed it to him. And it was a moment of, I remember it. I still talk about it because it was a moment of when I truly believe it was so pure in that he really didn't judge me. Like I had
No.
so much dialogue in my head. Like I'm chopping it and putting it in a plate and I said so many horrible things to myself in that moment. Like I was like, I can't believe you just did that. The kid has been waiting. Oh my God. And meanwhile, this whole time I'm looking at my son and no big deal. And then I gave to like, thanks, mommy. And it was nothing. And I thought, okay, okay. Well, you seem fine. And like, you're not mad at me. And like, okay. And it was like this moment where I kind of reflected. I'm like, it's not that bad. Like, you're okay. You don't have to feel so guilty about everything all the time. It was an honest mistake. And then he moved, and he forgot about it within 13 seconds.
Oh
We're
yeah, he was
over
happy
it.
with his apple.
He's moving on. He's already done. And I just thought, wow, just having that conversation, just having that, like, yeah, you're right, buddy. I'm sorry, I forgot. Like, I'm sorry. And like, that's okay, mommy. No big, it's okay. And then just went about it. And I'm like, okay. And that's where I really started to recognize sort of how thick the guilt goes, but internally, right? Like we are our own worst critic in that way. So I just wanted to share that with people
Oh,
who's
I
ever
love that story. That's a
forget
beautiful story.
forget
And
his apples.
your little guy, he
Mhm.
displayed one of the techniques to help yourself. It's called body doubling.
Hmm.
So what he did was he stood next to you,
Yeah.
which helped you to focus on getting the apple done. So those who are watching, have you ever noticed that for some of you, having other people around actually
Mhm.
helps you get the job done? So let's say you
Mm.
need to clean and you actually have someone around you who's going to help you clean. You go
Oh,
faster, you actually do it, you don't get as distracted. Or let's say some people like to do their work in a busy cafe like Starbucks or
yes.
coffee shop with
I
the
love
internet
it.
and there's other people around,
I
or
love it.
the school library. There's lots of places where
Mhm.
people don't recognize that this is called body doubling. You're just having another human who is
Hmm.
doing things and it forces your brain into doing this. So for myself,
I
can I
love
tell you the
that.
story about folding laundry?
Yes. Yes, you
Okay,
can.
okay. I hate it to fold laundry. Hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it. Hated it. Keyword there, by the way.
Mhm.
And so when I discovered body doubling, it's not the term I came up with. It's a term that's been floating around the ADHD community for a couple of years now. And I realized I had a great opportunity with my Facebook page, because that's the only social media I really had at the time was my Facebook page. And I could do live videos and fold my laundry and talk to people from all over the world about something I'm passionate about while folding my underwear. Like,
Right.
but I actually held the underwear down. Other things like little girl pants were up in the air and I was talking about ADHD and people would tune in from all over the world. And we used to
Yeah.
call them folding laundry parties.
Yep.
And so it was fantastic. It turned out to be a lot of fun. I had people, I think, over 10 different countries around the world fold their laundry on Thursday and Sunday nights for a couple of years on my
Wow.
page. And it started to trick my brain over time.
Hmm.
By the time a couple of years had gone by, I didn't need to body double. I now can fold laundry with joy because my brain associates it with something good. And so
Wow.
I was like, oh, I've rewired my brain. This is so cool. With such a beautiful, amazing community. And I still have followers that are still around from those days of the folding laundry parties. And it's just something, it's a beautiful history chapter of the ADHD Mama's journey into
That's
all of
amazing.
this. It was
I
really
didn't know that was a thing. And I do better, so much better. Like if I have something to do where I'm writing or I'm working and I go to a coffee shop, for as long as I for as long as I can remember, like that's where I would hide. Or the library. I remember in school, I would
Interesting.
I,
Mm-hmm.
that's all I'd be in the basement, like the basement of the library, and I would hide there. I'd be in bliss. I'd be in bliss. And I just thought it was my thing. Like, this is what I like to do. And again, hindsight's
There's
2020 in
a
terms of what I
reason
had.
behind it. Now,
I didn't realize
neurotypicals
that.
also use this technique. It's not just a neurodivergent thing.
Right, absolutely. Yep.
Um, but
Fair. Yep.
it is a technique.
I did not know that. That was an
Ah,
actual term.
so cool. Sharing. This is what it's all about.
Now, my next thing I want to talk to you, and this is, I'm very, very excited. So here we go. Big emotions. Emotional regulation. And I preface this also by saying, in terms of big emotions, because obviously children have them. We have, and so do we as adults, have big emotions. But I also, as my children are growing and taking me into the journey of learning,
Mm,
um, I've come to recognize that big emotions, I would naturally associate things like anger, fear, anxiety, which are obviously very real. But that's where my brain would go first. Now
mm,
what I'm starting to learn as well, big emotions can also be disappointment, where it's not so outward necessarily. It is for sometimes, depending, but sometimes it's very internal. And my son is teaching me that right now, where he's feeling a lot. He doesn't understand that he doesn't have the vocabulary to necessarily express it, but I can tell like there's big emotions going on with him that he's starting to get quieter. And I'm like, I
mm.
know my kid. Like that's not right. That's not the normal behavior. Like talk to me, buddy. Like what's going on? Like I'm trying to figure out how to translate it, understand it, help him manage it because big emotions they can look very different. And sometimes when he's really happy, God love him, he is screaming at the top of his lungs in my face and he's happy, like he's in the greatest mood. And I'm like, holy cannoli,
it,
kid.
it's still disruptive. It's still big. The
Yes,
emotions of ADHD
like
are like
whoa.
a lot, and it's not just the negative emotions. It's the good emotions. It's all of
Yes,
the emotions. It's just
absolutely.
so much emotion.
It's so much emotion. Again, normal for kids, absolutely. But again, when you put it through the ADHD lens, I really do think the high energy, high intensity, we go back to that sort of amplification, right? And when you have a parent or parents um, that are ADHD,
We
I'm
add fuel to the
noticing,
fire.
right? And what I'm noticing, again, we're learning about ourselves. So I struggle with high sound. Like, and I see it, I'm noticing it more. So when my son hits a certain pitch, I like my whole entire body will like I will jitter. I'm like, nope, can't do it. No, 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 no. Like, hold on. Like I can't, I and it's getting worse as I'm getting older. I'm noticing it that I really can't, like I have to step back sometimes. Say, mommy can't go that high. Like the pitch. Like I can't, mommy can't hear that kind of noise. I can't do it. So we have these conversations. But I just mean how we navigate the big feelings and big emotions and to be a parent and partner, etc., that can help translate, manage, and understand.
So I want to go in a couple directions, but I want to remember. So I'm going to
Mhm.
tell a story about the kitchen, and I have
Okay.
two books here.
Okay.
Which should I go first with?
Kitchen. It's where
Kitchen.
my brain went first.
I'm the cook in the family. I love to cook. It brings me joy to make food for my family. I actually enjoy it. I do not bake, but I can cook. Baking takes too much executive functions. So I would get so angry when
Mhm.
people were in my space in the kitchen making noise, being loud. And it took me a couple of years to figure out that this was a me issue and not a them issue.
Right.
And so this is part of what I wrote in my book. This is what I teach in my courses. You got to find out where the places where the issues are happening. The kitchen was mine. I cannot function while the kids are talking to me and trying to take my focus and cook. It's going to cause me to go shift into that anger, that frustration. It takes too much executive functions. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be good. So my girls are 9 and almost 11, but
Mhm.
we've started this process for the past 5 years. They're not allowed in the kitchen while I'm cooking,
Hmm.
like at all. Don't. You will find the other parent to deal with unless you're bleeding or dying. You're not bugging me. Because if you want dinner, this is not going to happen. I
Okay.
love you. I think you're amazing. I totally want to support you. Don't talk to me right now. And so it's part of holding a boundary to
Yep.
protect yourself as someone who has ADHD. I have no shame about the fact no one's in my kitchen when I cook. But I can talk
Hmm.
during dinner. I can talk afterwards. I create moments where we have these special talks together, but it is not while I'm cooking.
Amazing.
Mm, mm. I took time.
Boundary. Okay.
Boundary. It's boundary holding, and especially if you did not learn boundaries growing up, I don't blame you. I
Hmm.
definitely did not either.
I did not. Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
a very good book. It's
Hmm.
better than her first book, as in it's easier for parents to read, by Mona Delahook, PhD, The Brain Body Parent. I'm sorry, I don't have the cover. But it's called
There you
Brain
go. Yeah.
Body Parenting.
Okay. Brain body parenting. Okay.
Mona Delahook.
All right.
So this book talks about the polyvagal theory of your nervous system and the different pathways it can take. And it is not ADHD related, but
Hmm.
it definitely talks about having a safe nervous system before you can problem solve. Because go
Oh.
ahead and try to problem solve while you're angry in the kitchen trying to make dinner. That
Hmm.
is not the moment to try to solve
No.
this problem. It's when you're calm and can have a conversation, or before you start cooking, before you get to that level of frustration. But that also requires some understanding. So I really, really liked this book for that understanding. But kind of like how it's something you said
Hmm.
about talking it through.
Yeah.
This book, I love kids' books to explain things. The Rabbit Listened. So
Okay.
this book is a kid's book. I like reading kids' books even to adults because the concepts can turn
Absolutely.
into really good moments to learn. And this one, the different animals. So this little guy has an issue. His tower falls down.
Okay.
And the different animals react in different ways. One wants to stomp and shout. One wants to hide. One wants to destroy other people's stuff.
Okay.
But really, the
Hmm.
kid needed to stop, pause, and figure out what worked for him. So when everyone was trying to force him to do it their way,
Right.
he wasn't learning to process his own emotions. He wasn't learning how to deal with his own
Mm.
emotions. He was learning how to deal with their emotions and how they deal with things. Now, he still ended up going through cycles of an anger, a destroy, maybe I can destroy someone else's, like all those things.
Right.
But it's because the rabbit just stopped and listened that got him through that, because all emotions have a beginning, middle, and end. They do end.
Right.
Do.
Right.
So understanding that and waiting. So when I started this whole process of the rescue method, what I teach in my courses, what I taught in my book, all of those things, my daughter was the angriest child I had ever met.
Hmm.
Angriest. Her her meltdowns would last anywhere from an hour to 8. And she would
Wow.
have multiples a day. There was no
Yeah.
moment that was joy in our life. It was all screaming
Hmm.
meltdown. It was a nightmare.
Yep.
And so when I started this process, waiting for her to go through the emotion the
Hmm.
first time,
Right.
I kept telling myself I'm doing this all wrong. I sat in the hallway. I cried. She destroyed her room. She was a child, very small child at the time. It was ripped apart. Things were smashed. She was angry. She threatened me. It was like all levels of anger came out of this child. And I
Right.
just waited for her to go through it.
That's
And
what's
then we
gonna.
did the
Okay.
rescue method. And it was so hard. It was before this book came out, but I had to be the rabbit.
And just listened, let her go through it, and then talk. I'm assuming, obviously, talk it through with her after.
Mhm. Now, we went from multiple meltdowns a day
Yeah.
to during the pandemic, we
Yes.
moved halfway across the country, away from our family, away from our support networks, with two
Hmm.
very stressed out parents during a pandemic.
Mm.
My daughter, in that 9-month period or a 6-month period of the we're moving,
Hmm.
sell the house, pack the house, drive across the country, get a new house,
Right.
2 meltdowns. And both of them only lasted 15 minutes. She's had one this year. One. So I actually
Ooh.
teach this course. I will share. I will. So I do them live. I prefer live because we can
Right.
really get down to the nitty gritty with you. But I do have recorded versions of this courses, and I'm going to share. These are my parenting courses. So live, the Big Emotions course.
Yeah.
Let me double check that. Yes, February. In February of next year, I'm teaching the Big Emotions course. And
Wow.
then in March, I'm teaching the Discipline and ADHD course. So these
Oh,
are 2 hour long courses that are live. You ask the questions, you bring your spouse. We will walk you through this so that you're more confident and capable of
yeah.
using the rescue method in your day to day life.
That's amazing.
So plenty of options and plenty of price ranges
Yeah.
of availability of the type of courses that are available, because I do think ADHD resources need to be accessible.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually it's exactly what we're dealing with right now with my son. We're noticing improvement, but we're working on that. It's just we're finding, or we were finding about a year ago, the tantrums were multiple a day,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like and there's like no joy. It's like how is everything, and like we're walking on eggshells, right? Like
Mhm.
everything
You
might
don't
set
want
him
to
up.
set them
I don't
off.
want to set him off. I don't know what I said, and then I said some things like you said this. I'm like, no, I
So
didn't.
there's this the
I'm like, what?
misinterpretation
Yeah,
on
there's
their part,
yes.
and that
Mm-hmm.
this we go through that.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
give you the tools so this can
Mm-hmm.
turn around, because
Yeah,
it does. It does turn
it
around.
can. Okay.
People now who meet my daughter don't believe me, what we
Right.
went through. They're like, "But she's so pleasant." I'm like, "You have no idea what it took to
You
get
don't
there.
know.
I've written a book about it, okay?" Not specifically about her, actually. But I mean,
Right.
holy cow,
Yeah.
I mean, she is blossoming as a human right now. And the
Good.
other day, she's playing so video games. I like them. It's time for the girls and I to problem solve and do teamwork. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really lovely time. I play video games actually with them, so it's not just my kids doing it by themselves,
Right.
because I enjoy it too. And the other day, my daughter screams out, and sometimes it turns into like a screaming fit, and we have to
Mm-hmm.
stop, we have to talk about it, and all that good stuff. But this week, she's like, "I'm living my best life."
Aw, as a mom, like that's beautiful.
Oh,
Winning.
I just get teary
A
eyed of that
hundred
because it's
percent.
just
100%. As you should. It's an accomplishment. A hundred
she's
percent.
living her best life.
Oh my Lord. That's
But that
amazing.
wasn't always the case.
Right. That's amazing. On that, my next question, which is actually a really beautiful segue and natural or organic. Um, Creating your own sense of normal. And what I mean by that,
Mm.
as I am, as we're all on the journey, is it beautifully, I think, goes back to some of the things we discussed about people wanting to give advice and I think having the best intentions, but at the same time, they don't necessarily work for everybody. And I
Yeah.
come from a beautiful family and friends that genuinely mean well and want to help, right? Like one, oh, like try this. And we're working on the continuous, it doesn't work for me. Thank you. That's not going to work. Nope, can't go there. Why? Because we're going to be too tired. Oh,
It's
yeah, but if you
learning
just,
about holding
where it's like,
boundaries.
yeah, no, we can't. It's like, oh, but if you just, no, I understand, but we can't. And I want to, but I can't because I know what that's going to do to me the next day or what that's going to do to the, like, I can't. So
Mhm.
in creating your own normal, which I think we have to do for ourselves, for our families, and sort of what we know is going to work best, and leaving space to actually figure out what that is, because we're going to try things and they're not going to work and they're going to fail, and that's okay. And we need to allow us to feel that disappointment and anger, because I'll speak for myself, and that frustration, and then move on to the next thing to figure that out. Oh, that worked a bit better. Okay. And so, what I would love to just briefly chat about quickly is just some ideas, strictly from an idea perspective, because when I got into this community, or when I really started to dive into ADHD mamas in general, that started to help me, knowing full well that it wasn't always all going to work for me. but it was in communities and groups that I was joining that we were talking about these things that I'm like, oh, that. Oh, okay. So because of some of the groups I was in, I made one section in our kitchen is a chalk wall. I made one for the purpose of maybe this will work because lists aren't happening. We don't take lists. It's not working. So I'm going to write it out. And it it's something that we found with my kids as well, because then they were doing chore lists and things like that, and they liked going in and putting the check mark. So just that's one example that.
I have a classroom size whiteboard in my kitchen.
And I'm noticing the beautiful post-its behind you, and I want, like,
Oh, okay. So
that's
can we
my
talk about like
jam.
this is related to my work, my
Mhm.
day-to-day job. So
Mhm.
yes, I'm the ADHD mama. I do work a full time with Autism Nova Scotia, and this
Mhm.
is what my ADHD brain did. So
Mhm.
I am a facilitator. I've been a facilitator. I teach. I've been
Mhm.
a facilitator for 23 years, and so I'm teaching an employment program to autistic adults right now. And I was learning how to do the program, and I realized it wasn't working with my brain. If it doesn't work
Okay.
with my brain, is this going to work with autistic brains? So
Okay.
I tried to figure out why. And so by figuring out why, I took my stack of sticky notes and I
Right.
had to do this. I broke it down.
Yep.
Covered the wall in every single topic. And then I grouped all the topics into groups. And then I realized there were patterns, and I saw the patterns. And now every single week, the purple ones, can you see
Yep.
purple there? Purple
Yep.
ones are the week's topic. The blue just says 1, 2, or 3, because it's 3 sessions in a week. The pink ones are topics that were already created. Green are ones that I created, and the one orange one means the outside activity that happens in the group. And so this is a prime example of my ADHD brain doing things in a way that makes sense for me, because the system that was already created didn't work. And
Right.
it is working. It's working beautifully. It is 110% clear what we're going to be working on. And then it's clear for me to be able to explain the program when I'm promoting it during my day job. And it just works in a way that makes sense. And I leave the sticky notes up now because they bring me joy of what my beautiful ADHD brain was able to do
Yep.
when I didn't actually have a lot of confidence when it came to working in a workplace. The last job that I had, like adult job, I say this, the ADHD mama is a job, but the last job I had, I got fired for a spelling error.
Hmm. Wow.
I have a lot of trauma around work, and I finally work in a place
Mhm.
where they got excited over this and
A
they
hundred
encouraged
percent.
it.
Yep.
And so now this just is a beautiful reminder of what I can do. But
Right.
I had to go through that getting fired. I had to go through that, unfortunately, that trauma to get to a place where just accept how your brain works, Laura. And with
Yeah.
that, it's working.
Yeah.
I wrote a book. I didn't learn to read until grade 7, and I've written a book. Like,
Yeah.
can I
That's
just take a
amazing.
moment to appreciate that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I just have
So
to say, like, me staring at those post-its right now, like, there's a calmness to me. And like that's what part of my thing is, like, the outward has to be a certain way in order for me to like function productively. So I'm like, I look at
mm,
those post-its, I'm like, that is so beautiful. Like
thank
that's
you.
amazing. Anyway, so yes. And something else too, another strategy. Well, again, for myself, it's a big trigger for me is the outside environment in terms of
Mm.
organization and being it has to be a certain way. And interestingly, my husband is the opposite. So uh-huh, I know. So my husband, God
Compromise.
love him, he's not as organized, let's just say that. So he leaves things, doesn't remember, doesn't realize that he even did it. And I'm there like just tapping my finger, like I'm staring at that cup. I'm staring at the cup. The cup's gotta go, the cup's gotta go. It's gotta go. Can't stay there, can't stay there. So it's like we definitely butt heads sometimes, but something that I had to really work on. And then we had kids, which are obviously naturally beautifully, and my kids are very creative and draw, and there's markers and there's stuff
Mm.
everywhere. So the compromise was you get one room, which is the toy room. It's allowed to be messy. I mean, it's got shelving, like it's organized if they keep up with it, but mommy can't get upset when she's in that room. That is your
Mhm.
room. It is your
Mhm.
space. But the rest of this floor, no thank you. We're going to use whatever you want, but you have to tidy up after yourself. But it was that compromise for me where it's like, okay, they can't feel uncomfortable in their own home as well. Like that's not fair. And I don't want to be that parent or that mom or that person either. So it was very much about that compromise of, all right, this is all you. This is on this one's on mommy. Okay. So that was something else that took working through for me, I will say. For myself, my palms are sweaty talking about it a little bit. Where I'm like,
Oh,
"Whew,
oh,
yep, we're all good though. We're good." But it's something that I have to work on. Like it's and recognizing again about myself, where it's like it's okay. It's not. It doesn't mean that everything's
mm,
chaotic because there's stuff on the floor, right? It's that internal feeling of, it's like no, sit with it, embrace it. You're okay. You're okay. It's just something.
absolutely.
We'll do it later. Like we'll get it done. We'll do it later. But yeah, another strategy that I've kind of am working on and will continue to work on. But
It's a wonderful strategy. I love it.
mm, so
When it comes to cleaning, that is one of my biggest hurdles.
mhm.
And I have worked with a declutterer,
Oh,
professional
sounds
declutterer.
so great.
Uh, Wendy Stone. Wendy
Hmm.
Stone. One, epic name. Two, amazing
Hmm.
human being. And she does it virtually also, by the way.
Really?
And she
Mm,
has a background in working with people with mental health struggles. So barriers to cleaning with no
noted.
judgment.
I'm like,
One of my
noted.
favorite humans in the world. I'm not gonna lie. So Wendy Stone has helped me, and there's been pictures of us doing the space, and I'm thinking now, I'm like, yep, I had the same theory about the kids' playroom, and now
Mhm,
it is like it just. And I'm like, oh, the kids' bedroom also got that way. So I'm like, maybe this weekend, what we'll do is we'll take all of the clutter and put it
mhm,
in the one room, and then do what Wendy taught me to do with it. Follow the things that you learned, Laura.
mhm. And then what was that whole oh my goodness, pardon me, I'm gonna forget her name. Marie Kudo, is it
Yes. Does this bring you joy?
Yes,
I
yes.
struggle with that one as someone with ADHD, to be
Mhm,
honest, because things have
mhm,
meaning.
mhm. And I'm giggling because we went through that for the second pandemic, and I was like, "Yes, Marie Kudo." I'm like, "Yep, we're doing this." And my husband was that was a sit down conversation
It was
because
probably very like triggering
it
almost.
was very triggering because with memory, right? He struggles with memory, that things, objects held meaning. So
Mm,
it's like
mm,
I understand that, like, we don't use that, or it's on the floor. Like I get it, but when I look at that, it actually triggers a memory. It reminds me of this, and that's positive. So I can't get rid of that. And it's like, well, wait a second, that could be said for all of this. And then he's like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, no, no, no.
yep,
So like,
that's where the issue
that's like, oh, no,
is.
no, we have to have this conversation. So but I would have never, again, the other side of it, like I would have never associated that with memory or
Mhm.
never. And so it's in that learning too. And I find with my kids very similar, where it's like, we are working on the release and letting go. We can't, we want to just declutter a little bit without, but being respectful of things that are still very important to them. And it wasn't until recently, otherwise, I would have never had those conversations where now we have, okay, this is a big, let's say, pile. So we actually have it in a pile, it's in a bin, where it's like, hey, I think these things are not being used and they're always on the floor. Let's go through them together and let's decide if we're going to keep them or if we're going to donate them to other people to play with. And my husband is part of that, where it's like, okay, well, this is what I found on the floor of your, like, and yourself, daddy. And so we have those conversations because I am now learning that there's memory associated, and that is very, very important, if that makes sense, to other people. And I have to be more considerate of that as well.
It's a give and take.
Yeah.
Relationships, they're not
Yes.
easy, my goodness.
Yes. Yes. They and just how you're how you grow as a person, right? Like there's so many parts of it that I'm so proud that were doing that I know that my beautiful European family would have never even, and I giggle because sometimes, like, would have never even thought twice about. They're like, "Are you
Mm.
serious? You did that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did. Like, I had to." And it was great. Like, it was great. And now I sort of feel like I have that empathy for something or that understanding of something that I would have never had before. And it took that experience or that argument or that whole process to even learn that because I would have never learned that otherwise.
Yay for
Um,
growth.
yeah. So in that way, I'm
Okay.
like, I have to say, yeah.
Do you ever have the moments when you go through growth and you've gone through a big growth and then you're
Hmm.
like, oh, I can relax for a while. And you kind of relax into it. And then you discover the next level of growth. And then and
Hmm.
you're almost like mad at it. You're like, I'm done growing. I've done enough growing. I
I
want to
don't want to
spread it
grow
wild.
anymore.
I'm good.
Yep.
I'm happy.
Hmm. Or my
That's
friends aren't growing. Why do I have to grow? Like, I've done that. I'm like, no one else is growing this way. Just me, man. Just me,
um
man.
I find it's a common thread among ADHDers that they have this drive to grow, but also this resistance. Kind of like you need routine, but you don't want to do it.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And the minute like we steer off, like I have routine for a while and I'm good. Like that's my safety. But then I have to
Mm.
break it. Like I have to break it a bit because I'm like, nope, we gotta like break the chain, living wild, and I feel good. And then there's the, oh no, 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 no. Okay, who am I kidding? Let's go back. Like, no, no, just kidding. And like it goes for a bit and it's and then we go back and then we're good for a while. And then it's like I'm living my best life, YOLO. And like then we break it and it's yeah, that's I get that
And
way
it's learning
sometimes.
to accept that that's okay.
Yeah, I
There's
think so.
nothing wrong with doing it that way.
Yeah,
Just
I
remember
think
the
so.
joy in it. So the joy in the little things.
Yeah, and make your own normal, people. And I say that with love. Like, just
Oh, make your own normal.
I'm gonna put that on a T-shirt, and I mean it. Like, just make your
You
own
should.
normal.
I would totally wear that t-shirt proudly all around with my overalls.
Well, ADHD Mama Laura, thank you so much for doing this. This really was wonderful, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to put all the information on our own website at That's for Company, as well as when this gets officially posted as well. I'm going to put links and titles to your website, to your services, to your
I
book.
should send you my tree link. It makes it easier because then there's the website and the tree link, and then that will
Amazing.
cover all of the things because there's a
I'm
lot.
efficiency and productivity is also my love language. So thank
Oh,
you so much.
good. Yay! I'm
So
all about trying to make life easier. My goodness, because it's hard enough on us ADHDers.
it is actually. But thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
We'll
This was
talk soon.
amazing.
We'll talk soon. Bye.